Class, this is an explanation of the answers to a couple of our practice revenue recognition problems from this particular learning module. So the first one I want to talk about is this part 3 of the coffee house, where the student receives a coupon for 2 croissants because of the situation where they're out of croissants, and for $7. So he's paying for getting a discount, because down here we see that the coupon for 2 croissants is usually $3.50. It's not exactly $4 because $2 per croissant usually, but some coupons will not be redeemed. So we've already made an adjustment to the value of the coupon to make it $3.50. So this is 2 performance obligations, the coffee and the croissants. And the sales price is $7. So to allocate the sales price between the 2 performance obligations, you take the $3.50 divided by the $8.50, because the total that the student is receiving, the total standalone values, is $3.50 plus $5. That's $8.50. So $3.50 divided by $8.50 is the amount assigned to the croissant coupon, and then $5 divided by $8.50 to the actual coffee. And the part that is assigned to the croissant coupon is going to be unearned. The coffee part will be revenue. You won't record the actual receipt of the revenue until number 4, when they actually redeem the coupon. So that's the situation there. Now, the I Spy is a little more complicated and requires the process of identifying the performance obligations. In this case, there are 2 performance obligations: the ongoing maintenance and the installation, and the software go together, are so intertwined as to be 1 performance obligation. So it's not 3, it's 2 performance obligations. And your journal entries or T accounts would look something like this. When you receive the cash, and you receive the cash early, remember, you're not going to complete this project for a year, but they send you the money, and so they're providing financing, and they give you $9.5 million. So the difference, the $500,000 between the original contract amount and the amount they wire to you, is because of the financing component. That's significant and therefore has to be recorded. So you record the $9.5 million in cash and $9.5 million in unearned revenue. You also record the prepaid or deferred contract costs for $200,000 for the bonus that you pay on that to that person who made the bonus and made the sale. The other costs mentioned are not considered incremental, meaning they would not have happened only because of this contract. But when there is a cost that is only for this contract, and you're going to defer the revenue under the revenue recognition guidelines, you also must defer the cost, meaning put it as an asset or prepaid because you've paid it, but not record it as an expense until the time in which you record the revenue. So we record the $9.5 million. We then look at the variable consideration, because the contract kind of changes during the narrative. First thing that happens is that we change the terms, and they're going to give us some inventory instead of $100,000. Now that inventory is worth $115,000. So we debit inventory receivable and credit the unearned revenue. And then there's also a incentive to get the contract completed on time or even early. And we use the probabilities of each of the outcomes and multiply them out and add them up. So the expected value process we learned about earlier. And the value of that bonus is $24,000. So we debit contract receivable and credit the unearned revenue. So that's our total contract amount, or $10,139,000. So that's our contract price, step 3 of the process. Then we need to, the $500,000 over time will go into unearned revenue just because of the financing, and the credit unearned revenue and debit interest expense over here. Now we need to take this $10,139,000 and divide it between the two performance obligations. Now there's probably enough information to do it a couple of different ways. There seemed to be the most complete information for the cost method, and so we used the cost method, and we allocated 98% of the revenue to the installation and 2% for the ongoing maintenance, because as we looked at the cost, it was 98% of the cost and 2% of the cost in terms of those two performance obligations. You could have also divided the total contract price by the total cost and then multiplied it by the cost, as well as we showed earlier in another example. So once you allocated that, then when you deliver the installation, get it all installed, you're going to debit unearned revenue and credit revenue. So that recognizes the revenue. Now, when you get the equipment or the inventory, we find out that it is, first of all, we credit the receivable and debit inventory, and then we sell it, we actually get $120,000 instead of $115,000. So we have a debit to cash of $120,000, credit the inventory for $115,000, and the additional gain is not really a gain, it's revenue. It's a change in the value of what we received, that non-monetary item we received. And so we charge it to the same, or put it in the same account as our revenue. We actually finished in 11 months. So instead of getting a $24,000 bonus, we actually get a $50,000 bonus, which means we receive $50,000 in cash. We credit the contract receivable for 24, and the difference of $26,000, or the extra bonus, is also revenue. Between 11 months and 12 months, we then take the amount of the revenue that was deferred still in unearned revenue, $202,780 for the maintenance contract, and divide that by 60 to get how much per month. And every month from the next 60 months, you're going to credit revenue for $33.80 and debit the unearned revenue. Now, a little less critical, but still a point to remember, is when we record this prepaid being used up. Remember, this contract cost for $200,000 we originally recorded. We also need to move that, and 98% of that is moved from deferred or prepaid contract costs to the sales expense. At least $4,000 that's going to be spread out over the next 60 months, because it is part of the contract for the continuing maintenance. And so we credit that prepaid and debit sales expense for 67, which is 4,000 divided by 60 for the next, every month for the next 6 months. So, 60 months, so that this cost matches up with this revenue each month. So that's your answers.